All right, number one. Let me share a few things that I've learned by studying and listening to and speaking with two people. First is Oprah. I've not met Oprah Winfrey in person, but listened to a fantastic mini-series. It is done by, I think it was WBEZ. I may be getting the call sign incorrect, but a Chicago-based public radio outfit created a 3-part mini-series called The Making of Oprah. Or Making Oprah, and very easy to find. There are a few things I took from it, among many, many others. So the first is really a few core beliefs of Oprah's, and these ended up being mantras that a lot of her producers would repeat because they would be told this frequently by Oprah herself. So the first is there are only 2 emotions, love and fear. So even if you disagree with that statement, I wrote it down because I think that it can be used as a powerful question. If we assume there are only 2 emotions, love and fear, which in this moment are you feeling, or which is causing you to behave in a certain way? And as Tony Robbins has said to me and has said on the podcast, stressed, I'm just a little bit stressed, and so on. Stressed is the achiever word for fear. So there are only 2 emotions, love and fear. Next up, this is something she learned after a particular episode with skinheads. This was in 1988. And Oprah had, in the beginning, to, of course, in sweep season and otherwise, try to raise ratings and viewership for particular episodes. And she had skinheads on at one point to talk about race. And she realized at some point, I think in the middle of the episode, that she was not using them as part of her agenda. They were using her, and that she had provided a vehicle for spreading darkness in the world, in a sense, and that it was not going to be constructive. It was actually going to be destructive. And so she made the decision not to represent darkness in the world. And this is a binary decision. So I think that it is very useful, again, as a lens through which to view your decisions and projects and so on. Are you attempting to, at the very least, be a force for good in the world, or even if you are not perpetuating darkness, committing dark acts, are you representing darkness in the world? Meaning providing a stage for it, or writing about it in a way, covering it in a way that is not intended to provoke an action to mitigate it, etc. All right, so that was the second thing I wrote down. And then the next was you can only run your own race. And this is something that she would tell her producers if they were concerned about what the competition was doing. If you're in a race, say a horse race, and you look back to see what someone is doing behind you, you'll very frequently fall behind and then get second or third place. So you can only run your own race, keep your blinders on, and focus on your strengths effectively. Okay, next up, we have Seth Godin. Seth Godin, I've had the pleasure of spending some time with, and these are a few things that he mentioned to me, and this was probably, in fact, at the last Shopify Build-A-Business competition winner gathering that I took these notes. He mentioned a number of books. One was called Cult Your Brand. The next was Debt, which he's talked about on my podcast as well with him, the very first episode, I believe. The Gift by Lewis Hyde, and Lewis Hyde has some fantastic other books, including one on trickster mythology, if you're into that type of thing, as I am. Then Understanding Comics, and there are a bunch of random bullets. Kramer Knives, he likes Kramer Knives, Kramer. One of his lines was, doing more is a 4-letter word. And then there were 2 that really stuck with me. He also was a big fan and is a big fan of The Mystery Show, episode number 3. This is a podcast produced by Gimlet Media. Then there are 2 more. All right. Be happy with 20,000 customers. If you delight them, you'll never lose them, but you will lose them if you try to go for 20 million people. And I don't think they're always mutually exclusive, but I think this is very good to keep in mind in a world obsessed with scaling and more and doubling and hockey sticking and so on. That's all fine and good, but I think that it's very easy to be romanticized by lingo used for venture-backed startups and to shoot yourself in the foot, or in some cases, shoot yourself in the face. So in almost all instances, something like 1,000 True Fans, written by Kevin Kelly, which is an essay I recommend everybody read, There's an updated version in Tools of Titans, and I think he's also put it on his site at kk.org, so you can check that out. Leads to all good things. That is a necessary component, whether you want to be a $60+ billion valued startup, or you want to simply make an extra $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 a year. Next, this is perhaps the key, and I circled this several times on this piece of paper that I've kept now for quite some time. And here's the question that he posed. If I had to charge 2 times more, that is, and couldn't do any paid advertising, what would I do instead? So if I were targeting that at you, if you had to charge 2 times what you're currently charging for your product or service and couldn't do any paid advertising, what would you do instead? And this is something I've thought about a lot, and it is a fantastic question. And most of my yearly reviews take the form of a series of questions. And some of them I'll bring up, but most of them occur in the 17 questions that changed my life chapter in Tools of Titans, which is also, I put on the blog. So you can find that even if you don't have the book. Just go to 4hourblog.com or search my name, Tim Ferriss, 17 questions. It'll pop right up. The review often takes the form of many questions, and this can be one of them. If you had to charge 2 times as much, but couldn't do any paid advertising, what would you do instead? And I'll very often back into the features, so to speak, of a product or a high-priced event, in my case, where I decided that I wanted to charge twice as much as the closest competitor. Closest competitor, so to speak, or I shouldn't say competitor, it's really comparable, was priced at $5,000 a head. I decided to price it $10,000 a head, and then work backwards to create an experience that would be worth $10,000 a head.